If you're watching this right now, chances are you're emotionally exhausted from trying to figure someone out. Someone who seems close one moment, then distant the next. You're not crazy. You're not needy. You're dealing with someone who likely has an avoidant attachment style. And the truth is, unless you understand how they operate, you'll always feel like you're walking through emotional fog. But here's the harsh truth. No one tells you. Avoidants don't push you away because they don't care. They do it because closeness terrifies them more than rejection. And the more you try to fix it or get closer, the more they run, not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're triggering their deepest fear, intimacy. In this video, we're going to flip the script. We're not chasing, overthinking, or begging for crumbs anymore. Instead, I'll show you how to change your mindset in a way that makes them stop running. Because when you shift your energy, they feel it. And that's when their mask starts to slip. Stay with me because what you'll hear next will change everything. Let's get into the truth that most people miss. Avoidants want love deeply, but they fear it more than they fear loneliness. That contradiction runs everything they do. On the surface, they seem cold, aloof, uninterested, or even indifferent. But inside, there's a storm of conflicted emotion. Avoidants are wired to crave connection, but feel unsafe when they get it. They're pulled between desire and fear, and instead of expressing that, they retreat. Here's the part that might surprise you. What avoidants really want is safety. Not the clingy, smothering kind of safety, but the kind where they feel emotionally free to be themselves without the pressure of expectations, confrontation, or vulnerability they haven't prepared for. They want to be seen, but not too closely. They want closeness, but not if it threatens their emotional independence. And they'll never say this out loud, because in their minds, needing someone feels like weakness. When they meet someone who starts to chip away at their emotional walls, their first instinct is to resist. Not because you did something wrong, but because they've spent their whole life avoiding that kind of exposure. Intimacy feels like losing control. So instead, they test you. They withdraw. They ghost. They make you prove you're safe while giving you nothing to hold on to. But here's the paradox. The moment you stop trying to prove yourself, when you stop seeking reassurance, when you pull back your energy and focus on you, that's when their mindset shifts. They notice, not just because they're losing your attention, but because you've become safe in a different way, non-threatening, non-demanding. You're no longer triggering their avoidance because you're no longer chasing connection. They won't admit this, but what avoidants secretly crave is someone who sees them clearly, but doesn't try to change them. Someone who doesn't smother, but still has depth. Someone who doesn't chase, but also doesn't reject. This balance is what confuses them the most and attracts them the hardest. So if you're stuck in a push-pull dynamic, remember, it's not about saying the right thing to get them back. It's about embodying the calm confidence that makes them feel safe without you ever having to beg for connection. And when you get this, they always feel it. Let's talk about something most people overlook. It's not always what you say that pushes an avoidant away. It's the energy you're putting out. And the frustrating part, you can be doing everything right on the surface, being kind, supportive, understanding. But if your energy says, I need you to choose me, an avoidant will instinctively start pulling back. Now here's the game changer. When you shift your energy from needing them to being grounded within yourself, the dynamic starts to flip. Avoidants don't respond to pressure. They respond to space, not silence, not punishment, but emotional spaciousness. That means you're not trying to fix, force, or figure them out. You're in your own lane, emotionally stable, not waiting for them to validate your worth. That energy, it's magnetic. They may not run toward it right away because, trust me, they're confused by it. They're used to either being chased or rejected. So when you stop doing both and just exist with quiet confidence, they feel it deeply. It disrupts their pattern. They start to wonder why your energy feels different, safer, calmer, and without even realizing it, they begin to lower their walls little by little. That energy, it's magnetic. You don't need to beg for access. You don't need to decode their silence. What you do need is to regulate your own energy, because avoidants aren't afraid of you. They're afraid of feeling overwhelmed, smothered, or emotionally exposed. When your vibe says, I don't need you, but I see you, you're no longer a threat. You're a sanctuary. That energy, it's magnetic. So stop trying to convince them you're worth choosing. Start being the person who knows they are, with or without their approval. That energy, it doesn't just trigger their walls, it melts them. Here's the moment that changes everything. The shift that makes avoidants crumble, even if they never say it out loud. It's not when you plead, it's not when you over-explain, and it's definitely not when you try to make them see what they're losing. It's when you stop trying altogether. See, avoidants are wired to feel safest when they're in control, when they're emotionally distanced, when you're chasing, when they have the upper hand. But the second you shift from seeking their validation to choosing your peace, the whole power dynamic tilts, and they feel it. The energy changes. You're no longer reaching out with open hands. You're no longer emotionally available in a way that says, I'll wait for you to change. Instead, you become self-contained, calm, unbothered, not cold, just centered. You stop explaining yourself. You stop checking your phone. You stop showing up in places where your value is constantly questioned. That shift from anxious to anchored doesn't scream for attention, but it speaks volumes. Avoidants aren't used to someone detaching with quiet confidence. They expect protest, tears, chasing. When they don't get it, they feel disoriented. That's when the cracks begin. They start replaying memories, stalking your socials, wondering if they made a mistake. But this time they don't feel your energy chasing them in the background. And that silence, it's louder than any words you could have said. The irony is, when you finally detach in a way that says, I no longer need you to be who I thought you could be, they finally see your worth. Not because you forced it, but because you withdrew it. They crumble because the emotional control they thought they had slips. You stop orbiting around them. You reclaim your power, and whether they come back or not, you win, because you're no longer trying to fix someone who never gave you the security you deserve. This shift isn't about playing games. It's about breaking cycles. It's about showing up for you the way you used to show up for them. And when you do that consistently, avoidants can't ignore the impact, because nothing is more powerful than the silence of someone who finally knows their worth. Let's get brutally honest. Chasing validation from someone who keeps pulling away isn't love. It's self-abandonment in disguise. And the more you do it, the more you teach them that your worth is negotiable. But here's what you need to hear. Validation that isn't freely given is never real. If you have to beg, perform, or prove your value just to feel seen, you're not in a relationship. You're in survival mode. And that energy, avoidants pick up on it instantly. They don't even need to process it logically. They just feel it. Your nervous energy, your emotional dependence, the fear in your eyes when they withdraw. And instead of pulling them closer, it pushes them further. Not because you're unlovable, but because your need for validation puts pressure on them they don't know how to carry. Validation chasing tells them, I don't fully believe in my own value, so I need you to confirm it for me. But avoidants aren't emotionally equipped to provide that kind of safety, especially when they haven't even created it for themselves. So here's the truth. The most powerful shift you can make is learning to validate yourself before anyone else has the chance to. That means when they don't text back, you don't spiral. When they get distant, you don't overfunction. When they act passive, you don't perform emotional CPR. You center yourself. You remind yourself, my value is not up for debate. I don't need them to choose me in order to choose myself. This isn't about being cold. It's not about playing hard to get. It's about understanding that people respect what is self-contained, and they question what constantly needs external confirmation. Avoidants are drawn to grounded energy, not the kind that chases, the kind that holds still, the kind that says, I know what I bring to the table. I don't need you to recognize it for it to be real. And here's the twist. The moment you stop seeking validation is often the moment they start giving it. Not because you manipulated them, but because you stopped suffocating the connection with unmet emotional needs. When you pull back with grace, not punishment, not drama, just calm detachment, they start to notice what your energy brought to the table all along. But by then, you're no longer operating from need. You're choosing yourself. And from that place, you can finally see them clearly, not through the lens of longing, but from a place of truth. The bottom line, you can't force someone to see your worth. But when you stop trying, they often see it louder than ever. Your validation isn't in their hands. It never was. When it comes to avoidance, one of the most powerful tools you have isn't communication, logic, or even emotional vulnerability. It's the mirror. And that mirror is detachment. See, avoidants rarely take a hard look at themselves because they're constantly in survival mode. They manage emotional discomfort by distancing, deflecting, or denying. But when you detach, not to punish, not to manipulate, but to protect your peace, you become the mirror they can't ignore. Suddenly their patterns are exposed, their silence feels louder, their games stop working, and they're forced to confront what they've been avoiding all along themselves. Detachment is powerful because it holds a boundary without a word. It says, I refuse to participate in a dynamic where I have to earn love or beg for attention. And the energy of that decision, quiet, calm, grounded, reflects back their own behavior in a way that no confrontation ever could. Avoidants often rely on your emotional reactivity to stay in control. You're over-explaining, you're chasing, your fear of losing them. It gives them a sense of power. But when you detach, when you no longer flinch at their withdrawal or dance around their mood swings, you take that power back, and that shift creates emotional contrast. Suddenly they feel the difference. You're not angry, you're not cold, you're just done reacting. That's the mirror effect. You reflect back their inconsistency with your stability, their emotional chaos with your calm, their distance with your grounded presence or your absence. And they feel it, whether they admit it or not. Avoidants notice when the energy they used to feed off of goes quiet. It unsettles them, not because they've lost control over you, but because they've lost control over themselves. For the first time, they have to face what their behavior creates when there's no longer someone compensating for it. And here's where the real power lies. You're no longer trying to prove your worth. You're no longer trying to force clarity from someone who avoids it. You've turned inward. That kind of emotional sovereignty is rare. It's magnetic. It's unforgettable. And it's exactly what avoidants don't know how to handle. Someone who reflects their emotional unavailability back to them without trying to fix it. The mirror never yells. It never chases. It never begs. It just shows. That's what your detachment does. It shows them what it feels like to lose the emotional safety you used to provide. And while they may not crumble right away, trust this. The absence of your energy will echo longer than your presence ever did. Let's be clear, emotional unavailability isn't about being cold, heartless, or numb. It's not about pretending you don't care or shutting down to protect your ego. That's avoidant behavior, not empowerment. The right kind of emotional unavailability is rooted in self-respect, boundaries, and inner peace. It's about no longer giving open access to people who haven't earned your vulnerability. You don't stay emotionally unavailable to hurt someone else. You do it to stop hurting yourself. When you've dealt with avoidance, people who breadcrumb you, go hot and cold, or disappear when things get real, emotional availability becomes a gift. They haven't shown. They're ready to receive. So instead of overextending, over-explaining, or offering your heart on a silver platter, you pull your energy back. You protect it. You become selective. The right way to stay emotionally unavailable is by holding your emotional energy sacred. That means you don't overshare with people who are emotionally inconsistent. You don't invest in potential. You don't wait for someone to get it while sacrificing your peace in the process. You observe first. You respond second. You don't rush into closeness. You let it earn its place. Emotionally unavailable, when done right, looks like clarity. You know what you want, and you're not afraid to walk away if someone can't meet you there. It means your boundaries aren't up for debate. You're no longer triggered into chasing or proving. You no longer build castles from red flags. You recognize what's not healthy and remove your emotional investment without drama. Just decisions. You become a mystery, not because you're playing games, but because your emotional world is no longer wide open for someone who isn't emotionally safe. The most attractive energy in the world is self-contained. It's not performative. It's not reactive. It doesn't beg to be chosen. It knows it's valuable and doesn't offer itself cheaply. That's what staying emotionally unavailable the right way creates: power, peace, magnetism. So if you've ever asked, how do I stop getting pulled into the same cycle? The answer is this: stop giving people access to the most sacred parts of you. Just because you feel something. Emotional attraction isn't enough. Energy must be matched. Depth must be reciprocated. And until that's proven, your heart stays in your own hands, not theirs. They always come back. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not in the way you imagined, but avoidants have a pattern. And part of that pattern is circling back when the dust settles and they feel your absence louder than your presence ever was. But here's the real question. How should you respond when they do? First, understand this. Them coming back is not proof that they've changed. It's a sign they're feeling the consequences of your detachment. Your silence, your emotional neutrality, your refusal to chase, it's echoing. And now they're wondering why the attention they once took for granted has vanished. So when they pop back in with a casual hey, or test the waters with nostalgia or subtle guilt, pause. Don't fall into the trap of assuming this is a grand realization or an emotional breakthrough. Most of the time, it's comfort seeking, not commitment. They want the emotional safety you used to give them, but without giving you clarity in return. Here's how you respond. From power, not pain. You don't have to be cold. You don't have to be cruel, but you must be clear. Your energy should say, I'm not where you left me, because you're not. You've grown. You've detached. You've remembered who you are outside of their validation. If you do choose to engage, do it with boundaries. No oversharing, no emotional deep dives, no revisiting the old version of you who tolerated crumbs and waited on their emotional availability. Keep your energy calm, grounded, and intentional. Ask yourself, are they showing up differently? Are they offering consistency or just comfort? Are they addressing what caused the distance in the first place? If the answer is no, you don't owe them access, not to your heart, your time, or your energy. The same version of them will create the same version of pain. Don't let the temporary rush of they came back distract you from the truth. Did they come back better? And if they did grow, if they come back with clarity, ownership, and accountability, you still take your time. Real change is consistent, not convincing. Let their actions earn what their words cannot. You're not punishing them. You're protecting you. The most powerful response isn't revenge. It's restraint. It's peace. It's being able to look at someone who once had a hold on your heart and say, I'm not available at that level anymore, but I wish you well. You don't rise by reacting. You rise by remembering your worth, no matter who circles back. Let's end this with truth. The kind that frees you, not just feeds your ego. You don't need closure from an avoidant to heal. You don't need the apology they'll probably never say. And you definitely don't need to keep replaying old conversations in your head, hoping to make sense of their confusion. That cycle, it ends with you. Because the truth is, people who struggle with avoidance aren't evil. They're wounded. They've learned that closeness means danger, that love equals loss, and that vulnerability leads to pain. But here's where your power begins. You stop trying to fix what you didn't break. You can love someone deeply and still choose yourself. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. The final shift is understanding this. Your healing does not depend on their return. It depends on your decision to no longer abandon yourself in the name of potential. Potential doesn't build relationships, consistency does. Clarity does. Safety does. So what do you do next? You come back to you. You unplug your worth from their behavior. You stop making excuses for their emotional absence. You start validating your own needs. And most importantly, you hold the standard even when it's lonely. Yes, healing will test you. You'll miss them. You'll wonder if detaching was too much. You'll question if maybe, just maybe, they'll come back and be everything you hoped. But here's what you must remember. Every time you hold the line, you're teaching your nervous system that love doesn't have to mean losing yourself. That connection shouldn't feel like chasing a ghost. You deserve mutual energy, emotional safety, A love that doesn't punish your vulnerability, but protects it. If they couldn't meet you there, that's okay. That doesn't mean you weren't lovable. It means they weren't ready for the level of depth you offer. And that is not your burden to carry. What's next is building a life where your peace is permanent, not something you beg for between emotional roller coasters. It's learning to sit with the silence instead of trying to fill it with someone who keeps leaving. It's reminding yourself every single day that your softness isn't a weakness, it's a superpower, but only when shared with someone who honors it. Let go of the story that you were too much or not enough. Let go of the need to be chosen by someone who couldn't even choose themselves. You're not here to convince anyone of your worth. You're here to embody it. So walk away with your head high, your heart whole, and your boundaries firm. You've seen the truth.